All right, so believe it or not, computers are the future. Everybody knows within the last 20 years, the technology has been insane. But the ultimate goal, we want to set our customers up with the best gaming tower experience and whatever meets their expectations or exceeds them. So when it comes to understanding the specs, okay? So everybody here got the spec sheets, right, that we created, right? Are you, so, and that's the thing, if you don't have the spec sheets, please let me know at the end of the meeting so I can send you an email of them so you can print them out. The reason why those are so important is because it's literally right there in your face. Okay, you have everything you need about the computer. If the customer ever throws some questions at you, you're just like, oh yeah, it says it right here. Like this is what it has, this is what it can do. These are the games it can play. Now let me
Tyler, can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Let's just go ahead and send it to every one of my stores if you would.
Okay.
And I'll send you a list of them.
Okay.
So that way everybody makes sure that they have them.
Okay.
And beyond that, if you want to go onto the internet, you can order the original ones that are going to be color and prettier under printed materials, I believe. But you can order those; they're there, available for order. But at least getting the ones from Tyler for now on the information.
Right. Give me 1 second here. I'm gonna pull up an example of those sheets to show you what they will look like when we get them in color. Give me 1 second here. Okay, can everybody still see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is
nobody can see your screen. All we can see is your face.
Okay, 1 second here. How about now?
Yes.
Cool. All right, so this is what the spec sheets look like just right here. So basically, we went through, we put a picture, Tyler Yoakum, Heather, we all got a document and put the prices on them and everything about it. So basically, it gives the name of the computer, its main specs, and then down below it says it's optimized for, which means that it can play these games without a problem. Okay. Now, later on in the document, I'm going to talk about, the gaming requirements, because every game has its own requirements that it needs so it can be played smoothly. Okay. If the computer doesn't meet those requirements, it's just not going to handle the game. The game is going to lag. It's going to freeze. It's going to do all kinds of stuff that's going to make our customers pissy. Okay. So, regardless of that, we need to be aware of that, that we have the right requirements for them. But back to the product training here, when it comes to the specs, I just want to go over the first biggest one. It's processors. Okay. So the processor, it's basically like the brain of the computer. There's various types of processors out there, and they're usually most popular by brand. The two brands are AMD and Intel. Now listen, there's more brands out there, but they're not as good as these two. These are the main two. Okay. The processor just basically gives instructions to the computer and to complete any task. Now, how can we use this info to sell the desktop? So, let's say you have a customer walks in and they say, oh, I'm looking to get a gaming desktop. My kid plays all these games and stuff, and he makes video editing and he makes music. We're looking for a processor that basically is up higher in the rank. Now, AMD, they list their processors as like AMD Ryzen 5, and then Intel does their things like Intel i6. So obviously, the higher the number, the better the processor. So for example, like an Intel i9 is like the best processor out there. I think it's like worth like $900. I mean, it's pretty expensive, but it's just like you pay for what you get. If you put an i9 in your computer, you're going to be pretty set to do whatever you want. So yes, when it comes to processors, usually the last number of what the processor is, AMD Ryzen 7 3200, 3600, that last number. Obviously, if you have one that's 3200 and a 3600, the 3600 is going to be the better processor. Now, anything from Intel i5 and up is decently good. And all of our desktop computers have an Intel i5 and up. So that's good. AMD Ryzen, usually if it's in any of the Ryzens are good. And especially for everything that we want to do these days for our customers, like we're set. So you shouldn't have to worry too much about the processor. That's usually the last thing the customer is going to be concerned about. So the second thing is RAM. Okay. I'm pretty sure everybody's heard me talk about RAM because RAM actually is the big factor into our computers when it comes to troubleshooting any issues like that. It's a real important part of the computer. So imagine memory. Imagine your own memory. I mean, like that's what RAM is like. So basically, RAM comes in gigabytes. That's how big it is. So it comes in 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, or 16 gigabytes, or 32. Now, the more RAM a computer has, it's basically like a cache. So like my screen right now, my computer is saving the images of my screen to the RAM memory. So basically when I change the screen, it basically reflects back on the memory of the screen to make the process faster. Does that make sense? And the reason why RAM plays a big important role, because if RAM isn't in the computer correctly, or if it's not seated correctly, does anybody know what happens when the RAM isn't seated correctly in the computer? You get no video. You get no video. So basically, yeah, so the RAM plays a role into video on your computer. So whenever we have desktops that don't display, I'm always telling you guys to reseat the RAM, because usually if it's not seated in there correctly, you won't get any video whatsoever. Okay. The more memory you have, the more efficient the computer will be at processing big tasks and remembering all the important information from the previous screen. A lot of our desktops come with 8 gigabyte or 16. Obviously 16 is the better way to go, but 8 gigabyte usually does fine. Okay. So that's another big one. Storage, very, very simple. Everybody wants to have a lot of space, especially for today. There's two types of drives we have. We have a hard drive and we have an SSD. A hard drive has mechanical parts inside, okay? Like you can hear it moving around, it ticks, it makes kind of like a high-pitched wheezing sound. An SSD does not, okay? There's no mechanical parts inside. It's like a chip, okay? SSDs are faster. They will boot up a computer within 5 seconds. If I could show you how fast a computer boots up with an SSD compared to a hard drive, you would be like, holy crap. So our customers want SSDs, and all of our gaming desktops have SSDs besides 2. I'm pretty sure one of them is the Skytech Blaze, like the original Blaze. And then HP Pavilion has like a 1 terabyte additionally to an SSD, which is really cool. And usually the hard drive is used just to hold space that like pictures, videos for the customer, whatever they feel like they just want to save as a backup. So SSDs are important, and I would recommend that we look to sell our customers ones with SSDs. Graphics cards, okay? I'm not going to get onto this one just yet. That's the big one, okay? I'm going to save that one for last. Processor speeds, you might see occasionally on the spec sheets that there are different types of speeds on the spec sheet. So this processor says, Intel i7 2.9 gigahertz. Okay. Basically, that is how fast the processor can process the task. And with that being said, like, we have processors out there that go to 3.1 gigahertz. That's 3.1 billion in 1 second. Like, it's fast. I mean, it really is. And the way that you can promote that to your customers is saying, hey, look, this Intel i7 has a 3.1 gigahertz process speed. Like, and then you throw big numbers at them like that. Like, that's 3.1 billion tasks in a second. Like, it can handle a lot of stuff. That customer is going to be like, oh, I kind of want that. I kind of want the speed, because let's be honest, we all want fast computers, do we not? So that's another thing. Processor speed is just a number on how fast it can, convert all those cycles. Now, sometimes you might have processors that say, like an Intel iCore 9 core. So imagine like a big square, just a big square. Inside that big square, there's 8 other tiny squares. Basically, those are like microprocessors. They all do the same thing, but the more cores that a processor has, usually the faster and better it is. And I don't usually include that in the specs because it's not too important because it all does the same thing. So if you ever come across, a processor or a spec that says it has this many cores, that's basically what that is. So this is I think this is going to be the most important topic of this document, is gaming requirements. So let's say you get a customer comes in and they say, oh, Jeff, like I'm looking for a computer for my kid. He loves to play Fortnite. He loves to play Call of Duty Warzone. So you're thinking, oh, well, I wonder what computer is best here for, Call of Duty Warzone. And you want to know that. Well, look it up. And I mean, it's as serious as I'm being serious. I would look it up. Just look up, Call of Duty Warzone PC requirements. First thing that's going to pop up on Google is the PC requirements that the game recommends you have. Okay. Now, once you figure out and you see what it wants, so let's look at the stats over here. It wants an operating system of Windows 7 and Windows 10. All of our desktops have Windows 10. Okay. No Windows 7. It's gone. It's retired. It's in the ages. Jeff Borders time. Okay. It's going to ask for processors, and it's telling you right here that it wants an Intel i3 or an AMD or higher. Okay. We don't have any i3s. i3s are pretty old. So, as you're looking at your spec sheet, you're looking at what computers obviously meet the expectations or exceed it. When it comes to memory, it says it wants 8 gigabytes of RAM or higher. Okay. All of our desktops have 8 gigabytes of RAM. So obviously, that kind of broadens your search a little bit. Now, when it comes to graphics cards, just like processors, okay, there's 2 brands of graphics cards. There's NVIDIA and there is AMD, just like processors, okay? Just literally like processors. Whatever that last number is, that's the better graphics card. So let's say you have right here, it says an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 670. Obviously, if you have a desktop that has a 670, and then you have another desktop that has an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1080, the 1080 is better, okay? 1080 will always be better. So when looking at your spec sheets, you want to make sure you look at that last number. Now, AMD is just basically the same thing. They'll put AMD, Radeon, blah, blah, blah. Obviously the higher one, okay? We're looking for the highest numbers in our specs, guys. That's really the biggest thing. Now, there's some graphics cards out there that are like 3090 and stuff. Like those things are impossible to get. You can't even get those in today's world. And we don't have, none of our computers have that. So to make it easier on you guys, the best graphics card that our desktops have is a 1660, okay? Now, it's an NVIDIA GeForce 1660. Now, we have other graphics cards like a GeForce GTX 1650 Super. Now, just ignore the Super, okay? There's no difference between a 1660 50 and a 1650 Super besides one little thing, and it's memory. Okay, I'll get to that later on. But if you have a game that a customer wants, don't be afraid to look it up on the computer and see, okay, let's see what this game requires so I can provide that customer with a system that can handle it. And that's the worst thing. Like, you don't want to give a customer something that the game can't handle or that the computer can't handle. Our variety is like no other. The best thing about our desktop computer inventory is that we have good, better, and best. Having these different options provide a level of expectations for the customer. Knowing what each computer is capable of is doing is the key to offer them the best one. Refer to the spec sheets, guys. I mean, that's the biggest thing. If they just want a desktop computer so they can do some schoolwork on, any of our computers will be fine. Now, if they want to get a little bit more picky and say, well, I want to play Fortnite, then you look up Fortnite specs. You're trying to basically look at all of our inventory and pick out what's best for them. So this is a picture of a desktop that we have here at the store. And I felt like it'd be important for me to show you what where all this stuff is. So I'm gonna turn on the little marker here, and I'm just gonna circle some stuff. So this is over here. This is CPU fan, not CPU fan. It's just a case fan. Okay. You know, they keep the system cool. You know, they got all a bunch of, you know, beautiful lights and everything, you know, woo, you know, attracting. They basically just, you know, attract the customer into the looks of the computer. Your processor, this is the heat sink. Okay. The processor gets hot. With all the tasks it's doing, it gets hot. Okay. It's got to have some type of coolant, a cooler on top. And then the processor sits on the motherboard down here. And basically there's like a layer of thermal paste that goes there, and then the heat sink sits on top. So it keeps it cool. Okay. Your graphics card, as you can see, it's this big guy right here. Okay. As you can see, they usually put the name on the side, GeForce GTX, you know, and then you have ASUS is who made it. You know, that's the brand. You know, different companies will buy graphics cards and then put their name on it and sell it. You know, that's how it is. Now, you know, sometimes on the side of the graphics card, it might say what the model is, or if it's a 1650, or if it's a 2070 or whatever. But if not, I can show you a way how to look up internal specs on the computer to see what it has. I feel like that'd be needy for you guys. Jeremiah, I saw you turn your mic on. What's up?
Yeah, I was just going to say is it's very important for us to look at that because people can like take them out and put it something else in there, correct?
Yes, yes. People will do that. People will usually, and I've seen it before. I've seen some weird cards come into service that were just hand-me-down cards that the customer has taken out. So that's what it should look like. There shouldn't be any other thing inside there. So next thing would be the RAM. This is the RAM right here. It's a skinny stick that sits in a slot. Okay. Basically, if you haven't received the RAM, there's a YouTube video on there where I show you how to do that. The RAM is important because it provides video to your monitor. And of course, remembering all those tasks. Okay. So those are the biggest things. All these other cords and stuff in here don't really mean too much. On the back side of the computer is usually where the SSD or the hard drive sits. Okay. It's mounted in there, so you won't ever have to see that. But if you have a computer that is not booting or not loading up, or it's giving you an error saying that it can't find a boot device, go ahead and take the back screws off there and look and see if you see the hard drive or SSD in there. It's literally the size of my phone, probably about that big, and you won't miss it. Okay. 1 second here. Oh, well, I didn't take away all my markings. I'm sorry about that. All right. So streaming and gaming. Customers these days, they want to stream. They want to provide their content out to people on Twitch, YouTube. You know how it is. Gamers, it's a big thing. And people make a lot of money off streaming and gaming. It's crazy. Our customers are wanting to do big things, and this includes streaming and playing games at the same time. Whether you believe it or not, that's a lot on a computer. It really is. Because you got to think about all the things that the computer is doing. The computer is trying to run all the processes for the game. The RAM's trying to remember all the processes and the memory from the game, while the customer's got a webcam hooked up here with a microphone and another program running in the background that's recording all of that. I mean, it's a lot. So we want to provide our customers with the best setup for that. And when it comes to streaming and gaming, the best way to do that, it's going to be our best system. And if you don't know what our best system is, it's going to be the Neo Air or the Atom. Those are our two best systems. And when it comes to video editing and music and stuff, always provide them with the best system. Now, not saying that the other systems can't handle it, but when it comes to all that happening at once, I would recommend you give them the best system. Don't forget about Google. If they say, hey, I just want to make music, and you're saying, okay, what program do you use? And for example, I make music all the time. So I use a program called FL Studio. Go to Google, look up FL Studio PC requirements. It'll tell you the exact same thing as the games do. Knowing those requirements and seeing what fits best, it's going to be the deal breaker. One more second here. Okay, so graphics cards. Graphics cards display the high resolution video from the computer. As I said earlier, there's two main brands, AMD and NVIDIA. Now, graphics cards come with memory. Believe it or not, they come with memory. And basically, that's just another factor that makes the computer efficient. The graphics card has another side of storage that helps it remember, besides the storage that the computer has itself. And they don't usually go too high. You might see one that has 4 gigabytes of memory or 6. They don't usually go too high. Now, here's the big difference. You might have a graphics card that is a GeForce GTX 1650 with 4 gigabytes of memory. But then they might throw something at you and say it's a 1650 Super with 6 gigabytes. So do you see where the Super, basically the Super just makes it pop out a little bit more and say, oh, this one has just a little bit more memory. You know, that's all it is. It's a name brand thing. Now, like I said, if you're confused, which is better, NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1080 or a GTX 1650? Obviously, the 1650 is going to be better because it's the higher number at the end. And there's no real specs on a graphics card you could look up. I mean, I guess you could look it up and see what it has, but they all generally do the same thing. And it's more about how all that stuff works with the graphics card to provide the best gaming experience for our customers. Customers want frames per second. Frames per second is literally the bigger picture. Customers want a graphics card that can support high frames per second. So in video, there are many frames that make up the picture. The higher amount of frames, the smoother the picture is. So for an example, when Fortnite came out, they only offered 30 frames per second. And as you can, I mean, literally it's like this. I mean, it was really choppy and like movement inside the game was real choppy. Well, once they, did some updates on the game, they allowed 60 frames per second and higher. So you can get as high as 30 frames per second. I mean, as you can see in this picture, looking at the background here, you can see that just the difference in 60 to 30. The resolution and everything is so much smoother, and the gameplay is so much smoother. So customers will want, especially serious gamers, they want some real high frames per second so they can have smooth movements in the game. And that's important, and you can use that as a selling feature too. For the Neo era, you could be like, hey, this has a 1650 Super, graphics card in it, and it supports real high frames per second. It's going to give smooth graphics because, I mean, that's what they care about. And, the last thing we want to do is not give them false information on, on what the computer can do. But generally, all of our computers right now can handle 60 frames per second and higher. Okay. They're going to get between 60 to 120. Now, certain customers know how to do things such as overclocking. I'm not going to get too much into it. Basically, you're, making the graphics card and the computer work 10 times as hard, and you're overclocking its abilities, and they might get higher, frames per second, but that also provides potential issues with it crashing or, a whole bunch of other issues. But generally, 60 frames per second to 120 is where we're at. And that's good. I don't care what anybody says, 120 frames per second. I mean, your eyes, you could tell the difference, okay? So if customer ever asks about frames per second, tell them that our desktop supports 60 to 120 frames per second. That should usually have them pretty confident that they're going to want it. Any questions at all? I always offer myself out to questions, and I don't have a lot of people ask me questions, but I want to make sure you guys all understand everything and you can use this information for your selling features. I mean, it's crazy how far computers have taken us, and with this information, I really hope it can help you guys, sell more and, offer the best experience to your customers.
So the only question that I probably have is, like you said, it's the last number that matters. Like the last number of the graphics card would be the better graphics card. So
Right.
like a 1080 versus a 1650 would be the 1080, right?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
The 1080 versus the 1650, it would be the 1080 is better because the 80 at the end, right?
No. So 1080. So you got 1080, 1650. So let me print this out. Not really the last number, but the last four, that would be what you want to pay attention to. So you have the GeForce GTX 1080, 1080. Obviously 1650 is the better one.
That's
So
what I'm.
yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So the last four would be what you need to pay attention to. Yes.
Hey, Kayla had a good question that I thought would be good to ask. How important is it if a customer has an old monitor, maybe an old CRT monitor at their home? How important to the experience they're going to have is getting a newer monitor, with at least 144 hertz? What difference does that make for them?
So that makes a big difference. So it is very important that all of our desktops support HDMI and DisplayPort. So as you just heard, Biotech, literally, we bought a whole bunch of monitors from Biotech, and there were problems with getting display from our desktops, which there should be no problem getting display. But the Biotech monitor it fully supports DisplayPort, because a DisplayPort on a graphics card puts out higher resolution. It puts out the highest hertz and resolution. So we were using an HDMI, which basically is a compatibility thing, as like, well, if you have an older desktop that obviously doesn't have DisplayPort, plugging an HDMI to the Biotech, it would work. But since our computers are capable of using a DisplayPort, it didn't like the HDMI. Now, it's important that if a customer has an older monitor, and older monitors, they have speed for their own speed, 60 hertz or 120 or 144. If the customer wants a better gaming experience, you might want to mention to them that, hey, we have this monitor that has 144 hertz. It's really going to give you better graphics and stuff. So now I'm not saying you can't let them use their older monitor, and it might be something you might have to let them figure out. Or let them see. They might take the desktop home and say, oh, well, it's pushing out 60 frames per second, but my monitor quality is not the best. I think I want to get a different monitor. But that is important. That is important. If they want a better gaming experience, they want a higher hertz monitor, which we provide. So I think that's important. I think that's really important.
Hey, I want to say something. When I'm selling a gaming computer, I'm making sure to tell them about the monitor, and I think I want to say this so everybody else is doing it too. Tell them about the benefits of the gaming monitor, so that if they do figure it out at home, they don't just think it's our computer size.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because they won't necessarily realize that it's the monitor that's holding them back.
Right.
So we need to try to let them know when they're here. Hey, they told me they got a monitor. Hey, that's cool. Just know that if you're having some issues, it's your monitor. Come on back here. I'll get you a good one.
Right.
Which is going to add another sale too.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And sometimes it's just adding to the current sale. Because once you say that to them, they're like, oh, well, I don't want my kid to be disappointed. So let me just get the monitor for a couple extra.
Right.
So it's a nice, easy upsell.
Absolutely. Anything else? Anybody?
Yeah, Tyler, I got a quick question in regards to upgrading.
Sure.
Of course, whenever somebody asks me, I always communicate they can do whatever they want once they've paid it off and bought it out.
Right.
The Skytechs are, of course, fully upgradable, customizable. My question is about the HP Ultimate Pavilion and the MSI. Are they fully upgradable? Are they integrated, soldered together?
No. So all of our computers, looking back at the hardware, the customer could upgrade whenever they wanted. If they paid it off and they decided, hey, the computer has an i5 and they want to upgrade to an i7, that's on them. But every part in this computer is replaceable, upgradable. They could put a better graphics card in later down the road. We've had a few stores call and say, well, this customer wants a 30 or a 2080 graphics card. Can we put one in for them? We can't do that. Because just in that case that the customer decides to return it. So now you got Now you got messed up specs. You see what I'm saying? You know, you're going to have this computer sitting on display, and then you're going to be like, oh, well, this has a 1660, and customers going to be like, no, it's got 2070 in it. Like, you know, it's all about mixed up specs. So we don't usually upgrade for them, but once it's paid off, yes, they can upgrade, and everything's fully upgradable.
Okay, cool. And I just wanted to chime in. You were just talking about like performance and customers asking questions and stuff. And this is just something like I always say for guys, especially. I ask them, they're asking about processor. They don't know. I ask them, do you know about engines? A lot of guys know about 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines. I say it's like horsepower. Like this is a 4-cylinder, this is a 6-cylinder.
Right.
Or when people ask questions about like AMD versus Intel, it's Ford versus Chevy. It's a matter of personal preference.
Absolutely, yes. They basically do the same thing. An AMD Ryzen 5 is almost comparable to an Intel i5. I mean, there's a lot of comparison there, and it's just a name brand thing. That's really all it is. They basically do the same exact thing.
So a lot of times I have people that are wanting to play through a TV instead of the monitor, which is actually better for them to want to do the gaming through, a TV or our monitors that we sell.
I would recommend the monitor. Not saying that the TV couldn't handle it, but it is another form of preference. You know, a TV also has, you know, hertz that it puts out as well. So I guess it would basically be just whatever the TV specs are. But I would always recommend the monitor, you know, and a lot of people these days are interested in dual monitoring, you know, having 2 or 3 or multiple monitors. That's the best thing about our gaming computers is that we have, as you see on the back, I'm pretty sure you've all seen, we have multiple ports. So, you know, you can hook up 2 display ports and have 2 monitors, and, you know, I guess it's a more of a preference thing, because let's say I've left my house before and didn't take my monitor and just hooked it up, you know, my computer up to TV. It works the same way, but I'd recommend you keep the bundle the same and sell the monitor with it.
Okay.
Most TVs are 60 hertz, right? Not all, but most.
Not all, but
TVs.
most. Yes, most.
So that's going to be, you know, if you're playing a fast-paced game like Call of Duty,
Right.
there'll be a difference between 144 hertz and a 60 hertz monitor,
And that's
right?
the funny thing. Yes, there is a difference, but I can tell you that the human eye can barely see it. Barely see it. I don't know why people are so jumpy over, I want the 144 hertz, you know, instead of the 120, or, you know, you can't tell. Like, well, my eyes can't tell. I don't know about anybody else's, but I mean, I don't think you can really see it, but I think it's more of a spec thing. They want the, you know, best quality. But now I'm not going to lie, the hertz on a monitor when playing high-paced games like Call of Duty and stuff, like, you can see a small difference in it, the way that the picture comes back on the screen. Anything else at all? I will let you guys know. Now I'm not sure if this doesn't turn into gaming computers. So we just actually, how many of you fight MacBooks all day, every day? Apple lock, you know, it's bad. So we've actually been working on something in the last few months, enrolling ourselves with Apple Business Manager. It allows us to add our MacBooks into a Business Manager profile where we can see and control them. So let's say, for example, I'm using a MacBook right now. This one, after I forget what store it belongs to, I'm just using it for this, but I enrolled this one into our Business Manager, and it's going to go back to the store. Let's say it goes back to Adam's store and he sells it to a customer. They own it for 3 months, and they decide that they don't want it. You know, inactive customer, they're gone. And then it's Apple locked. Okay. Now, since it's enrolled in our Business Manager, we can prevent the Apple lock from happening, which means that we don't have to send it to Apple to be unlocked. We can actually remotely wipe the device from here. So it doesn't ever have to come to service. We can remotely wipe it. So we're basically,
I really like that.
The recovery is done at your guys' store, or I mean, it never has to come here. But the only downfall is that the only way to enroll them into Business Manager is they would have to come into service. So if you ever have one that isn't Apple locked, that just needs restored, I just ask you to take that one chance, just take that one moment and send it to service. Let me restore it and enroll it. And then in the notes of the service ticket, I will put if it's enrolled in Apple Business Manager and it can never be Apple locked again. Okay. And basically the way we're going to do this is Jacob's going to run us a report. at the end of every day. So we can see when MacBooks are paid off. So let's say we have one that's enrolled in Business Manager that gets paid off. We have to release it from Business Manager because it's not owned by us anymore. It's owned by the customer. So that basically we turn off all that stuff, and the customer, it doesn't take anything away from the customer. They can still use the MacBook as normal. It's just the activation lock is off. But once it gets sold to the customer, we will turn that back on, and then it's free to the customer, and our profile and everything about rent to own is off of there.
Hey, Tyler, I got a question for you.
Sure.
That Business Manager, if they keep, so hypothetically they pay their MacBook off, but they keep their club plan. For insurance reasons, do we still keep it on there, or do we wait until they decide to take that off?
That's a good question. That would be.
Or can we leave that to their discretion? Be like, hey, just in case you get locked out while you're still paying on this, we can keep it under our Business Manager plan.
I think that'd be best. And I think the customer would respect that a lot as well. Saying, hey, if you want, if you decide, that, and now what happens if, how long does the club plan last? I'm not exactly sure.
It's a year.
It's determined on how long they've been in the club program.
Okay.
So you're up to 2 years.
So like, let's say that the customer, let's say that they're in the club plan and they decide that they want to keep, the MacBook in Business Manager. And let's say one day that they decide they want to sell it to somebody else in their family. Then they would come to us and say, hey, I'm selling this to somebody else in my family, I don't want it. Then we would remove it. But I would leave it up to the customer. If they want to keep it, then that's fine by us. It's not going to hurt us any. We have unlimited placeholders, for the MacBooks. But this is a big thing that it's going to be. I've been fighting MacBooks for 4 years now, and we finally, worked it out. And it's going to help us out, I think.
Also, Tyler, just go back to it. Since we're talking about club, if somebody replaces, like a graphics card or something like that inside their computer, and then they're on the club program, we will not service that, correct? If they replace the parts inside, we will not service it anymore, correct?
We would not. So if you ever get a desktop that comes back from a customer the graphics card's not the same, I recommend you send it up to us, because what we'll do is we will put the original graphics card back in the unit that should be in there, and then we'll take the one out that was owned by the customer that obviously if the customer doesn't want it. Now, some customers, I've seen it to where as soon as they've rented it out, they've swapped it out, and they've put their own upgrade in there, and then they ran into a problem, and then they've put, the original graphics card back in there. I guess, which is, I don't know, it's not okay, but